Let's go back to the 2022 season. Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott was just coming off his worst season ever. 23 touchdowns, a little under 3,000 yards, and a league-tying 15 interceptions despite missing 5 games. On top of that, the Cowboys would be bounced in the second round of the playoffs by the 49ers in a loss 19-12, their second straight playoff loss to the 49ers. Up to this point, Cowboys fans were growing frustrated and impatient with Dak Prescott, but we need to know why. Dak Prescott was drafted in the 4th round of the 2016 NFL Draft to back up Tony Romo, who up to that point was getting pretty injury prone throughout the last few seasons. And speaking of Tony Romo getting injured, in the Week 3 preseason game, Tony Romo would get sacked and he'd break his back, missing 6 to 10 weeks, which meant that Dak Prescott, the 4th round rookie, would be the starter for the next few weeks. Now, there were some mixed expectations with Dak Prescott, as in the preseason he was balling out, but at the same time, it's the preseason, we can never really tell. But Dak Prescott as a rookie was phenomenal. He went 7-1 in his first 8 starts, promoting him as the starter, and he threw for over 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, taking Tony Romo's spot as the starting quarterback and winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Not just that, but him and other rookie superstar running back Ezekiel Elliott would lead the Cowboys to a 13-3 record, the first in the NFC. However, in the divisional round, the Cowboys would lose to the number 4 seed Packers 34-31 after an Aaron Rodgers masterclass and a Mason Crosby game-winning field goal, and this game still traumatizes me to this day. This loss wasn't too big of a deal, as the Cowboys had a very bright future on their hands, and entering 2017, this team was no longer a Cinderella run, and instead they were Super Bowl contenders, a team that could compete with the rest of the NFL. But from 2017 to 2020, the Cowboys would only muster one playoff appearance, coming in 2018, where they did win, but the other seasons they were very mediocre or straight up bad. When you look at Prescott's stats during this time, from 2017 and 2018, they were alright, mediocre, but then in 2019 and 2020, they were phenomenal. Now in 2020, if you're not aware, he was injured that year after Game 5, breaking his ankle. So you look at those stats, those were just from the first 4.5 games of the season. But it was after this contract was signed after the 2020 season ended where even more pressure was put on him, as Dak Prescott would re-sign with the Cowboys on a 4-year, $160 million deal. And this is a lot of money, especially for a guy who's a borderline top 10 quarterback and has only led the Cowboys to 1 playoff win. So there was even more pressure put on this dude, and a lot of people thought he didn't deserve this contract, and he really didn't. But in his first season under his new contract, Dak Prescott would have one of the best seasons of his career, throwing for almost 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, as he led the Cowboys to a 12-5 record and the NFC East title. But this season is kind of held under a negative light. One of the reasons for that is that in the second half of the season, he really struggled. Outside of those final 3 games of the year, as you see right there, 4, 3, and 5 touchdowns with no interceptions, he was struggling a lot. And the other reason, and the most notable one, is what happened in the playoffs. It's the wild card round, and the Cowboys are trailing by 6 points with 14 seconds left, and they're at the 49ers' 40-yard line. Just to really fit the narrative, up to this point, Dak Prescott had not had a good game, a little under 250 passing yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception, and he was kind of the reason why the Cowboys were in this spot. Even though the situation they're in wasn't favorable, they could definitely pull something off, as they can throw 2 quick passes at the sidelines and then have 1 quick Hail Mary to the end zone. Instead, Mike McCarthy decided to draw up this.
This is scary, because I would take a shot to the end zone here when they're in the sideline defense, because you actually can hold on to the ball. You need someone, San Francisco, to get to the quarterback here.
Prescott takes off running the football. Whoa, I don't think this is going to work out.
It will. They'll be able to clock this. They were planning for it. It's down. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, the official gets in the way. The game's over. The game is over.
What an embarrassing way to lose the game, as even though Dak Prescott, that wasn't his fault. That wasn't his play call. He still played terrible. He didn't play terrible, but he still didn't play up to standards, and he was one of the reasons why they lost the game. On top of all that, Dak Prescott would support the fans who threw trash out onto the field after the game, after the refs, quote-unquote, screwed the game over for them, even though the refs were actually doing their job, and Dak Prescott would say that he regretted saying that and he'd apologize, so I'm not going to hold it too hard to him, but yeah, not a good look. We now come full circle to 2022, and we're going to start off with the opening game. Dak Prescott would injure his finger on the opening week, and he'd be out for 6 to 8 weeks. In this game, Dak was awful. Only 134 passing yards, no touchdowns, and an interception thrown. I couldn't find any videos, but this would lead to a full circle moment where Cowboys fans were booing Dak Prescott as he left the game, which is so low. This is why we get the title of the worst fan base in sports. And in his absence, stepped in backup quarterback Cooper Rush, who balled out over 1,000 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. That TD-INT ratio isn't pretty, but he did his part, going 4-1. The only game he lost was to the undefeated Eagles, and he looked like a solid game manager. At the time, people thought maybe Cooper Rush could replace Dak Prescott like Dak did to Tony Romo 6 years ago, or Cooper Rush could go to another team and possibly be a QB1 there, but hindsight is 2020, and looking back, those were very dumb takes. Dak Prescott would return in Week 7, however, he'd have his worst NFL season of his career, throwing for a little under 3,000 yards, throwing for 23 touchdowns, and throwing for a league-high 15 interceptions in only 12 games. There's really no excuse for throwing 15 interceptions in a single season, let alone in 12 games. And at this point, Dak Prescott was seen as an interception machine. The Cowboys would make the playoffs, and in their first game against the Bucs in the wildcard round, Dak Prescott would ball out, easily having the best playoff game of his career, throwing for 305 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions as the Cowboys beat the Bucs 31-14. But we cut to the divisional round, and the Cowboys are sitting in a similar spot they were at last year. There are 5 seconds left in the game, and the odds of the Cowboys scoring a touchdown right here are very, very unlikely. And if we look at Dak Prescott's stat line right here, 205 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. This was way worse than the Bucs game, and this was worse than the 49ers game last year. And Dak Prescott was one of the biggest reasons why the Cowboys were losing this game. But anyway, let's see the final play.
Final play looks like barring a penalty. Prescott over the middle of the turf gets smoked.
And just like that, the Cowboys were yet again bounced out of the playoffs. And if there is one clip on the internet that resembles how hated Dak Prescott is, it's this clip right here, where Dak Prescott, a few weeks after the 49ers game, is at the Super Bowl. Shocking. He's not playing, though, which isn't shocking. But anyway, he's at the Super Bowl, and he's getting accepted for the Walter Payton Man of the Year, an award that goes out to the best dude off the field. So, a very, very notable award, very noble award, and they should be cheering for him. He's doing good things off the field. Instead, they do this.
Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott.
Granted, the Eagles were in the Super Bowl that year, so there were a lot of Eagles fans, and Dak Prescott was taking it like a champ, but still, kind of sad that this dude was getting recognized for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. This dude is getting recognized for his good deeds off the field, and he's getting booed. It's really sad. Entering 2023, this was a big season for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Up to this point, Dak Prescott was very streaky, and at this point, he was seen as an interception machine and a playoff choker, in which he was. He was 2-4 in the playoffs up to this point, and Dak Prescott had a lot to prove in 2023. To a lot of people, this was a make-or-break season for him. But this past season, Dak Prescott would easily have the best season of his NFL career, throwing for 4,516 yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, leading the Cowboys to a 12-5 record, which won them the NFC East, and he finished second in MVP voting. Granted, this was a down year for quarterbacks, but in a down year, Dak Prescott was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. They would claim the 2 seed and they'd be playing the Green Bay Packers. And fun fact, before this game, no 2 seed had ever lost to a 7 seed in the playoffs. So historically on that side, it was looking good for the Cowboys. It would be really bad if they lost to a 7 seed like that. And you will not believe what happened. The Cowboys would be embarrassed by the Packers 48-32, becoming the first 2 seed to lose to a 7 seed. And at one point, it was 28-0 before halftime. And the Cowboys got 2 late game touchdowns, 2 garbage time touchdowns. Before that, it was 48-16. The score really doesn't give it justice on how big of a blowout this was. Another year, another Dak Prescott and Dallas Cowboys collapsed in the playoffs, and the Cowboys have decided to take on Dak Prescott's final year of his contract that he signed in 2021, and this could be Dak Prescott's last season as a Dallas Cowboy as he contests free agency in 2025. It's going to be sad to see him go, but at the same time, Dak Prescott is not the answer for the Dallas Cowboys. And with that being said, bye-bye.